Imagine leaning over the trough by the barn in the early morning hours, washing your face with ice-cold water. The weary reflection in the water seems like an ordinary moment. But today will be different, because at that very moment, the horse is also lowering its head into the same water, gazing at the same surface. There is no longer a single reflection there. Two separate faces, two separate processes of interpretation, are at work simultaneously. While you're observing your own weariness, your horse's face is also telling a story. Scientists can now distinguish exactly 17 different expressions. The most striking part is this. While you're still preoccupied with your own reflection, the horse has already picked up on dozens of clues you haven't even noticed. That's exactly what we're discussing. Just how much a horse's face actually reveals, and in turn, how it reads you. Let's start with the simplest example, the ears. A horse's ears are like two tiny radars operating independently of one another. Each can rotate nearly 180 degrees, and none of these rotations are random. According to behavioral scientists, you can reliably determine where your horse's attention is focused at any given moment simply by looking at the angle at which its ears are positioned. If both are pointed forward, its attention is fully focused on what's directly in front of it. If one is turned to the side, its attention is divided or it's feeling a slight discomfort. If both are pinned back, as every horse owner already knows, that's a warning sign. Even if you don't own a horse, this language won't seem foreign to you. Both cats and dogs have a similar form of ear language, but the version in horses is much more finely tuned, because horses are, by nature, prey animals. Their survival over thousands of years has depended on their ability to track multiple sounds simultaneously without missing a single one in their surroundings. This is where it gets really interesting. This system doesn't operate on a single level. A horse's two ears can face two different directions at the same time. While one is locked onto you, the other might be scanning for a sound behind it or movement in the distance. What you see as a calm, still horse is actually the outward expression of a mind processing two separate streams of information simultaneously. Just think about how intense the mental activity is beneath that still posture. The same mechanism at work in wild herds. A single horse can contribute to the herd's collective perception of danger by turning its ears in different directions. The horse in your stable, too, quietly carries out the same task, even if no one notices. The next time you look at its ears, you'll be observing just how many different things are actually swirling through its mind at that very moment. But this is just the beginning. The part that will truly surprise you is coming up next. What I've described so far probably hasn't surprised you much. Ear position is something most horse owners already intuitively know. But I need to make a quick aside here. The ears are just one of the expressions that can be read on a horse's face. The remaining 16 are part of a much more complex system, and the scientists mapping this system encountered something on the horse's face they never expected. We'll get to that in a moment. A study conducted at the University of Sussex adapted a muscle coding system developed for the human face to horses. Researchers mapped every muscle on the face individually. The results surprised even the researchers. On a horse's face, thanks to muscles that move independently of one another, as many as 17 different expression combinations can emerge. The difference becomes clear when compared. The number is much lower in dogs, and even chimpanzees lack this level of complexity. The reason is the same as with the ears. The horse is a prey animal, and for prey animals, social information is directly tied to survival. Tension in one horse within a herd must be able to spread to the entire group within seconds. This is precisely why the face has evolved with a speed and subtlety that no other muscle in the body can match. This language still functions exactly the same way today in wild Mustang herds. If you've ever seen a herd move as a single organism in the face of danger, part of that is the work of horses constantly reading each other's faces. Let's make this a bit more concrete. The nostrils can widen and narrow. The upper lip can tighten and relax. The muscle just above the eyelid can contract and relax. The chin can shift slightly forward or backward. All of these, along with the ears, can come into play simultaneously in countless combinations. The difference between the two expressions you distinguish as calm and a little tense may actually consist of a muscle twitch so subtle that your eye could never catch it. But the horse sees it. The other horses read it perfectly every single time, too. Stop for a second and think. How many times have you looked at your horse's face so far, yet seen only a small fraction of what's actually going on there? The answer might surprise you. I'm curious how many of these you've noticed before. Feel free to share in the comments. So, can you read these cues? Here's the surprising part. Some expressions even look familiar to the human eye. For example, the contraction of a horse's upper eyelid muscle bears a striking resemblance to the eyebrow movement we interpret as worried. According to scientists, this is no coincidence, because in most mammals, the same muscle groups are activated in moments of threat or uncertainty. The moment you look at a horse's face and think to yourself, "This horse is nervous right now," it's often not just a random impression. It's the moment you've correctly interpreted a real muscle movement. The strange thing is that even many people who have been around horses for years can't put these subtle differences into words. They simply act on the feeling that something's off today. This is actually proof that the brain processes these signals before you even become consciously aware of them. Experience makes you more sensitive to this language, but putting that sensitivity into words is a whole different skill. Here's another example. If a horse's lower lip begins to relax and droop, this is generally a sign of deep relaxation, just like how a person's jaw relaxes as they drift off to sleep. This is no coincidence. The relaxation response stems from the same muscle groups functioning in the same way across species. When you see that half-asleep expression, you might think the horse is truly as relaxed as it appears. But the other side of the coin is also true. During moments of tension, those same muscles work in the exact opposite direction. Here's the key point. These 17 expressions do not all appear together at the same time. Some appear as micro-expressions for a tiny fraction of a second and vanish instantly, just as they do on a human face. Even if you don't consciously notice it, you'll sense that something has changed on your horse's face, because your brain has registered that micro-expression long before you've grasped its meaning. Think about this. Every minute you spend with your horse, dozens of microsignals are flowing across that face. You can't put a name to most of them, but you sense those moments when you say, "For some reason, today feels different." That's exactly what it is. But who exactly are these expressions directed at? The answer to this question completely changes everything. Yes, some of these signals are sent to other horses, but researchers have found that a significant portion of horses' facial expressions are directed specifically at humans. That is, at you. A horse uses its face not only to reflect its own inner state, but also to share something with you. Now let's add another layer to this: sound. Your horse's whinny may sound like a single tone to your ear, but it actually carries two distinct frequencies. According to one study, one of these frequencies encodes the direction of the emotion, whether it's positive or negative, while the other indicates its intensity, that is, how strongly that emotion is being experienced. A whinny isn't a single note. It should be thought of as two separate channels of information playing simultaneously. This isn't limited to whinnies alone. That low, purring-like short sound your horse makes, the one you usually hear when it's waiting for food or when it sees someone familiar, is produced by an entirely different set of muscles and breathing mechanisms. According to researchers, this is more of a close-range, personal form of communication. The high-pitched whinny, on the other hand, is generally used for long distances. Your horse's voice speaks a language that even varies depending on distance. When you hear that short murmur, you'll know it's a signal reserved just for you, hidden in close proximity. Here's the striking thing. How much of that sound can you actually hear? Horses can perceive frequencies ranging from 33 to 35 kilohertz, far beyond the limits of human hearing. That means a world of sounds so subtle and high-pitched that you'll never be able to access it. You might sometimes find your horse's reaction to a sound baffling, yet it's responding to something you can't hear at all. Picture this. When you're next to your horse, it has both a face that can read micro-expressions you can't see and an ear that can pick up frequencies you can't hear. A horse experiences what's happening around you on a much richer level than you do. That moment you call a quiet afternoon might not be quiet at all for the horse. So does all of this, the ears, the 17 expressions, the dual-layered sounds, simply mean that the horse is constantly watching and reading you? Or is there another side to the story? This is where the truly interesting part begins, because this reading is by no means one-sided. In another study conducted at the University of Sussex, horses were shown photographs of the same person in both happy and angry states. The result is clear. Horses can reliably distinguish between these two expressions. Moreover, when looking at an angry face, they tend to turn their heads to the left, a sign that they're engaging the part of their brain associated with threat assessment more intensely. What a horse sees when looking at your face isn't a random image. It's real data that's being processed, evaluated, and stored somewhere. This ability to read isn't limited to facial expressions alone. Other studies have shown that horses can follow a person's pointing gesture. What's more, a horse can even tell whether the person pointing actually knows something or is just guessing. It doesn't just look at the direction of your finger, it's also gauging how confident you are. This is a skill generally thought to be unique to dogs. But horses, too, read your face and interpret your gestures, combining the two to essentially assign you a reliability rating. Seen this way, all those moments your horse scrutinizes you every day aren't just random glances. They're an accumulation of small, silent assessments. And over time, this accumulation shapes how your horse behaves toward you. This might sound familiar to you. In all of our lives, there's at least one moment when we grasp the real truth, not so much from the words someone says, but from a small detail on their face or in their voice. What a horse does is essentially no different. The only difference is that it does this every day, every moment, without pause. Because for a horse, this isn't a matter of curiosity. It's a survival strategy. This isn't limited to sight alone. In another study, horses were shown only video or audio recordings, a human face expressing fear or happiness, or a human voice. Even while watching these recordings, tangible changes were observed in the horses' bodies. Heart rate, ear movements, and even the temperature of the eye area, as measured by infrared thermal imaging, were affected. The tension in your voice or a fleeting shadow on your face triggers a physical response in your horse's body, even if you don't notice it at all. Think about it. That slight stress you carry as you enter the stable in the morning, the tension lingering from a message you just received, or the opposite, a moment when you're truly relaxed. None of these things pass your horse by unnoticed. Its ears, eyes, and perhaps even its heart are gauging what you're feeling in that moment. Does all this mean your horse truly understands you? It's best to be cautious here. Scientists still haven't reached a consensus on whether this is conscious empathy or a survival reflex evolved from its days as a prey animal. But whichever is true, the result remains the same. The horse reads your face and your voice in far greater detail than you realize. Now let's go back to the beginning, to that scene by the water's edge. In that moment when you leaned over and looked at the water, two distinct systems of interpretation were actually at work simultaneously. Perhaps without even realizing it, you were subconsciously registering the angle of your horse's ears, the tension in its nostrils, and that tiny twitch of the muscles around its eyes. It, too, was reading the tone of your voice, the microtension in your face, and perhaps the size of your pupils. Both of you were unknowingly deciphering each other. And here, even scientists don't have a clear answer. Does the horse's ability to read you in such detail mean it's truly trying to understand your inner world? Or is it simply a reflex from thousands of years as a prey animal that has coincidentally adapted to humans? Researchers still can't draw a clear line between the two. This uncertainty makes the topic even more intriguing, because the conclusion remains the same. That face next to you is processing far more than meets the eye. And one question remains. If your horse's face really conveys so much, how many of these cues have you noticed but failed to name? What you've learned is actually quite simple. Your horse's face speaks a language far richer than you realize, and part of that language is directed specifically at you. What's even more striking is this. This communication isn't one-sided. As you read its face, it's reading yours. As you hear its voice, it's living in its own world at frequencies you can't even reach. You can carry this with you even if you don't own a horse. The next time you make eye contact with any horse, armed with this knowledge, you'll realize just how much that gaze actually conveys. Try this. The next time you go over to your horse, first just stand there for 30 seconds without doing anything. Don't change your facial expression or your voice. Then, slowly and deliberately, smile or relax. Consciously let your shoulders drop. Now look at your horse's ears, nostrils, and the area around its eyes. Is there a change? What you'll likely notice is a response that's much faster and much more subtle than you might expect. A twitch of the ear, a slight relaxation of the nostrils, an indescribable softening around the eyes. If you do this for a few days in a row, over time you may begin to notice a pattern. Perhaps the horse responds with its ears to even the slightest sign of fatigue in your voice, or perhaps it responds with just a slight relaxation in its eyes. Taking notes is also helpful. Jotting down in a few words which response it gave at which moment can help you develop your own horse's personal dictionary over time. Share this in the comments. Have you ever noticed an expression on your horse's face that you couldn't quite put your finger on? Describe that moment in a few sentences. Maybe with what you've learned today, you'll be able to reevaluate that moment with a fresh perspective. If you'd like to watch another video explaining how horses read, remember, and perceive people, all you have to do is subscribe. In every video, I'll continue to share a new truth that your horse has been telling you, but that you haven't noticed until now.